It is 9 o'clock. I'm Mark Dolan and this is GB News Tonight. As Shamima Begum reappears in court today, should we tell the ISIS bride she's no longer our country's problem? That's the big debate with my leading pundits. This evening, Esther McVeigh, Derek Lord and Rebecca Reed. Following more shocking revelations about the Nigel Farage de-banking scandal, is it now a crime to be a small C Conservative? And has the British workplace gone full woke? Plus, as they stand disunited over Israel, are the cracks beginning to show in Keir Starmer's Labour Party? In my big opinion, find out why a civil war is brewing among the Labour benches. And after parents were kept in the dark about what's being taught in schools, is it time to keep sex out of education? I'll be asking the former Education Minister Andrea Jenkins, plus her verdict on the one-year anniversary of Rishi Sunak in Number 10. Also on the way, as Arsenal apologise for having an all-white female squad, is forced diversity the death of meritocracy in sport? GB News star Nano Aquia gives her unfiltered reaction shortly. And here's a troubling story with more than 450,000 children in the UK classified as severely obese. Is it ever OK to put your child on a diet? Strictly Come Dancing star Christina Rivkin takes on George Keywood and Emma Wolf in the clash. As always, you'll get a first look at tomorrow's front pages. And Tom Bauer, top journalist, gives the police a dressing down after they turned a blind eye to calls for terror acts on Britain's streets. So, a big 2 hours to come with my big opinion next. You won't want to miss it. Find out why a Labour government means 5 years of bitter infighting with Starmer on the brink. That's straight after the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Mark, thank you and good evening. Well, the top story tonight is that Downing Street has confirmed 12 British citizens were killed during the Hamas terror attack in Israel. Another 5 are still missing. And that comes after an 85-year-old Israeli hostage released by Hamas last night described the hell of being taken into a spiderweb of tunnels under Gaza. Yocheved Lifshitz also said she was treated well and seen by a doctor during her ordeal. Hamas says she was returned along with another Israeli woman, Nurit Cooper, on humanitarian grounds. Their husbands, though, are still being held hostage. Yocheved's daughter, Sharon, who's a British citizen, translated her mother's description of the abduction.
A swarm of people came through the fence. The defense cost 2.5 billion shekels, and it didn't help even a little bit. My mom is saying that she was taken on the back of a motorbike. When she first arrived, they told them that they are Muslims and they're not going to hurt them, and that they ate the same food that the Hamas was eating.
And today, the Israeli Security Agency released footage of interviews with captured Hamas fighters, where one says he was promised huge rewards for capturing hostages.
In Gaza, whoever brings the kidnapped gets a bonus.
How much is the bonus they give?
An apartment and $10,000.
For each person captured?
Yes.
Who told you this?
That's how it works in El Qassam Brigade.
The commander told you this?
Yes, the company commander.
For each captured, you get an apartment?
Yes, because they wanted as many kidnapped as possible. The goal of our infiltration for them was to capture and kidnap as many as we could.
In UK news, the Court of Appeal has been told the decision to revoke the so-called ISIS bride Shamima Begum of her British citizenship was unlawful. The 24-year-old was a teenager when she travelled to Syria in 2015 and was later deemed a risk to national security. Her lawyers say the Home Office failed to consider legal duties owed to Miss Begum as a potential victim of trafficking or as a result of state failures in her case. The hearing, which started today, concludes on Thursday. And lastly, the Met Office is warning tonight of more bad weather on the way. A yellow weather warning is in place, an alert for rain across the southeast of England. It's in force from this evening until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And we already know that 2 women who died in a crash as a result of the storm have been named by police as Cheryl Woods and Sarah Smith from Caerphilly in Wales. The mother and daughter were involved in a 5-vehicle collision on the M4 last Friday. And a man who died after his car was swept away in floodwater near Aberdeen has also been named as Peter Pelling. At least 7 people are now known to have lost their lives because of Storm Barbet. On TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app, this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
If Keir Starmer makes it into number 10 next year, he may be a victim of the old adage, be careful what you wish for. If you think the Tories are divided compared to Labour in government, they'll look like the Von Trapp family in The Sound of Music. I can see Michael Gove in a dress made of curtains. There are cracks and fault lines across the entirety of Labour's policy agenda. Most recently, with Starmer's admirable stand on Israel, defending its right to self-defence and condemning Hamas. But soon after, we've seen Labour MPs dilute his message with protests from the Green benches about Israeli war crimes. Here's Labour MP Zara Sultana neatly illustrating my point yesterday in the chamber.
Palestinians must die before the Prime Minister condemns Israel for violating international law and calls for an immediate ceasefire.
So much for party unity. As Tom Harris points out in today's Telegraph, many Labour MPs are afraid to back Israel, the only democracy in the Middle East and the victims of a barbaric attack, because they have so many Muslim constituents. Now, these Labour MPs talk of ceasefire, except that's effectively asking Israel to be a sitting duck to more terror. A ceasefire is snake oil language. It's doublespeak for Israel, suck it up. If you thought October the 7th was bad, you don't think Hamas are planning worse? They have only one objective, genocide. And in the face of this rebadged Nazism, you'll continue to see Starmer and his party get themselves into a right old pickle over this issue. A worry if Starmer gets into number 10, especially for the Jewish community in this country. But it goes beyond foreign policy. Labour's woke agenda will also split the party if they make it to power. Having seen what happened to Nicola Sturgeon in Scotland, Starmer wants to limit people's ability to self-ID their gender. That means deciding from one day to the next that you're now a woman rather than a bloke. A sensible move from Starmer, but causing unrest among progressive backbenchers who think there are 100 genders. Labour is torn on net zero, with Starmer tearing up oil and gas licences and ditching petrol and diesel cars by 2030. Whilst Labour's big union backers at the GMB are absolutely furious. Why? Because they're worried about industrial jobs. Labour is split on Brexit, with many in his flock dreaming of single market access, a customs union, or even a return to the bloc, whilst Northern Labour voters will be spitting out their cup of Yorkshire tea at the very thought of it, as will Labour MPs representing them. Keir Starmer wants to stop the boats, as do a majority of the British people, but not a majority of the Labour Party, who, if we're honest, don't really believe in borders at all. Would Labour backbenchers vote for a Rwanda-style plan under a Starmer premiership? An Elvis Presley comeback is more likely. Meanwhile, Angela Rayner has boasted that she'll boost union power, enabling Mitt Lynch and his pals to further hold the country to ransom. It all points towards a picture of a governing party that will be ungovernable. Everyone is expecting a landslide Labour victory, but as the Tories have proved, even an 80-seat majority can still get you in trouble when people rebel. And what if, as is more likely in my view, Labour achieve a slim victory next year and win a majority that's tighter than Mick Jagger's leather trousers? Starmer will only be able to deliver his agenda with the support of hard left backbenchers like Richard Bergen and John McDonnell, who will have him by the balls. That's if he's got any. Labour is more divided than a Pizza Express Quattro Stagioni. I predict that Starmer will be presiding not over the country, but over a civil war in his own party. I anticipate 5 years of infighting, power struggles and utter chaos in which Starmer could fall, only to be replaced by the more popular Angela Rayner. At which point, could the last person to leave Britain please switch the lights out? Now, what's your reaction? Mark at gbnews.com. I'll get the thoughts now of my panel this evening. Former Cabinet Minister and GB News star Esther McVey. Banker and visiting professor Derek Lord and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Rebecca, what's your thought on this? Labour split on Israel, split on everything else.
I think it's perfectly natural that a party that represents a large group of people who have different and diverse views would contain people who have different and diverse views. It would be a very worrying thing if a political party was only able to have MPs if they all had unilateral beliefs. And to be honest, I think this is a little bit predictive. It may, sure, absolutely any of this could come true, but also Keir Starmer could transition and ask us all to call him Kirsty. Anything could happen. But I think to sit here and
I think he'd make a lovely Kirsty. I think he's got the eyes for it.
I think the more important thing here is that it's unlikely that we would have 3 Prime Ministers within 5 months and a vote of no and 25 letters of no confidence 1 year into someone's premiership, which is what we've had in the last year of Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss and Boris Johnson. So I think for anybody in the Tory party to be looking at the Labour Party who haven't had a chance to screw it up yet and say, well, they're going to have infighting is a little bit hypocritical.
It would be nice to have a Labour Party that had the view, that all MPs took the view that Hamas were terrorists and that Israel has a right to defend itself.
I think that Hamas are terrorists, absolutely, 100%. But I think the difficulty is that between when Keir Starmer first made his sort of proclamation about it to now, the collective punishment aspect of the Geneva Convention, it complicates it. And I believe that Israel has a right to exist, 100%. I believe that Hamas are terrorists, but I think, like a lot of people, I have felt uncomfortable with how Israel have behaved in terms of collective punishment. So therefore, I can see how MPs are pushing back against Keir Starmer's original speech.
Derek Lord.
Well, is in fact where I started, and I thought that it actually would come to this, because what was really troubling to me about the response from the West, and by the West I mainly mean the United States of America, Europe and the United Kingdom, was that everybody prioritised the language that Israel was entitled to make a response. Nobody said proportionate response, and a response that was in line with international law. They're now all trying to say that because they realise that we have to get people around the table to agree a settlement. It will be exactly the same as Indian partition in 1947. We're there all over again.
But that's only going to happen if Hamas are wiped out.
But listen, the one thing that's very clear to me is that for centuries, we've sent men and women to Parliament to address our concerns and deal with our grievances, and Labour MPs are raising legitimate concerns. Within the last 2 weeks, Israel has bombed Gaza many more times than the United States of America bombed Afghanistan in a year. Is that not cause for concern?
Indeed, although, we've looked into that figure and we cannot substantiate those numbers, but of course you're entitled to share that view. The wider issue is that I think that Labour and Israel is the tip of the iceberg. I think they're split on a range of issues, and I predict 5 years of civil war if Starmer gets in.
I think this was probably Starmer's biggest test as leader of the Labour Party, and he failed. He's shown he's not the leader of the Labour Party. The Labour Party are leading him. So far, he's never really come under the spotlight. So when he's spun on a sixpence, whether it was student tuition fees, whether it was renationalisation, he's managed to get away from it. Nobody's really scrutinised that he's changed his mind on every opinion. This is now showing that he's weak, and people know it. So you'll have the House of Lords, the Labour members there coming to him and saying, do you know what, we want to remain, and he'll buckle on that. So the Brexit decision that he said, well, follow that. No, he won't. He'll buckle. You mentioned GMB coming forward over the net zero. He'll buckle on that. Trans rights, he'll buckle on that. And those militant trade unions, Unison and Unite, have already said we're going to show him some power. We're going to show him what we're going to do, and he will buckle, and they will know he's a soft touch. You are quite right.
Especially with a slim majority.
Yeah, well, big or small, we've got a big majority, and we've shown that doesn't always help either.
But so if he's got a majority,
your crystal balls. We can't sit here saying what somebody will do.
No, but
we already know that Labour. We know that Labour are split on net zero. We know they're split on the economy, and we know they're split on the woke stuff, and they're split on Israel. They're split on everything. 5 years of civil war. Drink it up.
But the point I
let Rebecca make her point.
You should be split on things. The way the Tory party also split on things like net zero. You should be. You should be representing your individual
Rebecca, I'm not looking at...
Wait, let Rebecca finish her point. OK, well, Derek, you're going to come in.
Well, my question to Esther is that I think that you are too flattering of Keir Starmer, because I don't think he is...
Nobody's ever said that before.
He is not as nice as he looks. So, for example, your charge is that he's weak. Now, it cannot really have been a weak man that was prepared to expel Jeremy Corbyn from the Labour Party. I thought that showed enormous strength.
There's two sides.
That was an easy win.
Hang on, there's two sides.
Evicting that crank was an easy win.
It was not an easy win. All of those momentum people who were given their whole student years, who were the feeder for the next generation of
he's just so far
overnight.
proved two things. One, he desperately wants the job. But two, he is like a lawyer. Give him a briefing, he'll say whatever you want to say. And I don't need a crystal ball to see what he's going to do. I have seen that he's spun his opinion on so many things for so many people. It will be
Rebecca, I take on board. You're very sincere in your point, and I take it on board what you said about debate within parties completely. Every party worth its salt is a broad church. GB News is a broad church, isn't it, with some very odd pastors. But the bottom line is, are you comfortable with a Labour government in power that is divided on these issues, that doesn't have a single voice on net zero?
Absolutely, and I also think at the moment...
You think that ends well, do you?
Well, two things. Firstly, you'd be incredibly stupid if you are teed up to win an election by being fairly quiet about what you think. You'd be very stupid to start nailing your colour to the mast. He's going to win because people don't want the Tories.
It shows to me
all he has to do is not screw it up.
Wait, finish. OK, briefly.
He can't argue his point. He went out with a view and he's done a full 360 degrees. What I will tell you is Tony Blair never did that. He was the best leader of the Labour Party. Yeah. He had a view and he managed to create the narrative, win everybody round. I'm afraid
Can I also say to everybody in the studio, everybody at home watching and listening, the next general election has not yet been lost by the Conservatives. Don't write them off.
I do find it weird the way that people who do want to win are also willing. When I say people don't even challenge me on it anymore. If I were a Tory, the first thing I'd be doing is try and do some good, sparkly, magical PR to pretend that it was possible. This defeatism is what's going to lose them.
Listen, do you back Rebecca? Do you think that the Labour Party is a broad church and it's OK that they're debating net zero, woke issues, energy policy, the economy, Israel and much more? Let me know your thoughts, Mark, at gbnews.com. This show is all about opinions. I want to hear yours. Still to come after parents were kept in the dark about what's being taught in schools. Is it time to keep sex out of education? I'll be asking the former Education Minister, Dame Andrea Jenkins. But next in the clash, with more than 450,000 children in the UK classified as severely obese, is it ever OK to put your child on a diet? Strictly Come Dancing star Christina Rivkin, body positivity influencer George Keywood and former Super Size versus Super Skinny presenter Emma Wolf battle it out. You might want to bring popcorn, though that is a bit fattening.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Labour's divisions on Israel, I think, reflect wider divisions on the issues of economy, wokeism, energy policy and much more. This from Sharon, who says, Mark, the Conservative Party will win the next election. Never underestimate the power of the silent majority. But also other views coming in. Gordon says, Mark, how can anyone vote for a man who believes a woman can have a penis? Seriously, Richard, if Labour get in, the public purse will burst. The country will sink into woke dystopia. Anyone with a few bob will leave on a jet plane and we'll all sail back into the bosom of Europe with the great Brexit reversal. Can't wait, says Richard, I think ironically. Rod says, a Labour government? Spain looks like a nice place to live at this time of year. Keep those emails coming. Listen, I'm sure that you could argue Keir Starmer has the last laugh. He's ahead in the polls. The people are speaking very clearly that Britain wants a change. What's your view? Mark at gbnews.com. Now, GB News star Nano Aquia on Arsenal Football Club and an exploding race row shortly. But first, the clash. Now, what to do with the issue of fat children? Shocking new figures show that more than 450,000 kids in the UK now suffer with severe obesity. Almost 500,000 kids severely obese. And another 2 million are classed as clinically overweight. That means some 60% of the British population as a whole are overweight, despite the terrifying impact it has on the body. Now, we all want the best for our children, but it's well known that being fat as a child stacks the odds in your favour of becoming fat adults, with all of the constraints and challenges attached. So, is it ever OK to put your child on a diet? Let me know your thoughts at GB News on Twitter, and do vote in the poll. But to debate this, I'm delighted to welcome Strictly Come Dancing star Christina Rivkin, actor and body positivity influencer George Keywood, and the author and former Super Size versus Super Skinny presenter Emma Wolf. Let me start with you, Emma. Do you think we should be putting overweight kids on a diet?
Absolutely, yes. It feels very, very cruel, I know, to put children on a diet. Food is nurture, food is love, food is the most basic thing that we give our children. But it's very, very cruel, it's far crueler to allow a child or to let a child or to bring up a child overweight. As you referred to there, Mark, over 3/4 of children who are overweight as children become overweight teenagers and then overweight adults. So you're basically condemning children to a lifetime of heart disease, stroke, diabetes, everything else that goes with being overweight, the mental health issues, the physical limitations, amputation linked to diabetes. It's a terrible, terrible legacy to give your children. If a child is malnourished, we would treat that as a health emergency, wouldn't we? Why on earth are we allowing children to grow up overweight? It's a terribly, terribly sad thing to see an overweight child. When I was filming Super Size versus Super Skinny, I interviewed a young man, a teenage boy, 13, 14 years old. And he told me summer is his worst time. He had man boobs. He couldn't swim with his friends because they laughed at him. He couldn't shower with his friends. He couldn't play sport. He was absolutely terrified of summer because he was overweight, he was sweaty, he couldn't run around like other children. And I look at my 3-year-old and all they want to do is be outdoors and play and run and enjoy themselves. And when a child is overweight, that is a health emergency.
George Keywood, great to have you on the show. Body positivity influencer. What do you think about the idea of putting kids on a diet?
I think it's kind of not a great thing for their body image, you know? I feel like we've got to think about the mental health as well. I mean, I don't think a diet's really necessary. I think it's more down to what the parent is feeding the child. Surely the parents should just do this, you know, sort of on the sly, on the secret, you know, and don't make it such a big problem, because then it's going to really affect their mental health and just their whole body image. They're going to feel, you know, terrible in themselves. They're going to be thinking, why do I have to do a diet? Am I strange? Weird, you know, like it's going to make them feel uncomfortable. And I feel like a parent should be the person in charge of what they eat, unless they're sort of, you know, in their late teens or whatever. They should be doing this themselves. But I think it's the parents' responsibility to correct. George,
have you never heard of Pester Power? I've got 2 kids. They want the Pringles, they want the Haagen-Dazs, they want the Mars bars.
I've got a 3.5-year-old, so I know exactly what you're talking about. But we monitor what he eats. You know, my wife won't let him eat so much chocolate. He'll have a little tiny bit as a little treat. We are very careful and we're very cautious and we're very, you know, we're just looking after him and we're giving him the best life and we want him to be healthy. I know I'm not exactly the slimmest guy around, but my wife takes care of that and she's very good at making sure that he eats healthy. And I think it ultimately comes from the parent. It comes from the parent and it comes from what they feed them and what they're buying at the shops. And that could be down to their financial situation as well. I mean, this can be an impact on why they're buying bad options and why they're buying bad choices to feed their children. You know, I mean, it can be many factors, but I genuinely believe that it starts from where the parents are, really, what they're feeding their kids.
Christina Rivkin, great to have you on the show. Your body's a temple. You're a top athlete, a top dancer and performer. You look after your health. What do you think about the parents who let their kids get overweight? Is it child neglect? Is it child abuse?
I agree. There is 2 great points I just heard, and I just want to say they both have obviously very valued points there. I have a child, she's a 7-year-old girl who is in ballroom dancing world. She's competing every single weekend and she's the dancer, and obviously she already kind of looks at her body and compares her to others. So it's a very big topic in our family, you know, about healthy foods. Foods will give you energy for dancing, energy for being healthy, for being well, especially in winter when we have flus around and all other things. So we don't exactly talk about maybe diet, because I think children don't have a concept of a diet. And we don't want to maybe just say exact that words, maybe more like food preferences. This is what I talk with Mila about, the good food preferences, where she can have a little treat, she can have a little sweetie because she performed well. It's a little bit of an encouragement. Okay, you've done well, let's have a little ice cream to celebrate. But it is about healthy choices. And I think, but if the child already obese, we're talking about shocking figure, and it absolutely breaks my heart to hear something like that. How many children are obese and overweight? It is definitely parents' duty to explain and introduce to your child that there is healthy choices and better choices. I understand we're in a very difficult economic situation, and probably a lot of people struggling to actually make the choice to buy organic broccoli, which will be twice the price of the Happy Meal at McDonald's.
Yeah.
And this is really sad. You know, we unfortunately in that situation, maybe for some parents, it's actually a choice. Do I feed my whole family with a Happy Meal, or actually I buy one broccoli for the whole family too because I can't afford more? It's a lot to say what we are living through right now.
Okay.
But I think it's about those choices as the parents we must make, because we have to explain to the kids this is good foods, they give you energy, not exactly bad foods. I don't want to use those words either. But it's about like versus, you know, nurturing foods versus just fun foods, which maybe we just eat very rarely because they're just a little bit of like a treat, you know. That's how I explain that to my daughter.
Emma Wolf, you're shaking your head. You're not happy there. You're a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Well, first of all, Christina, you're a goddess, and I don't want to disagree with you on anything. I've always thought you are.
Get the gloves
a goddess.
off. Let's hear the truth. Stop being so polite.
Secondly, Mark, my body is a temple too, and you forgot to say that. I just want to say,
closed.
This is a myth. This is a myth that McDonald's Happy Meal is somehow cheaper than buying fruit and veg. That's absolute nonsense. Bad food, cheap food, junk food is not always cheaper. I definitely think the government should make healthy food cheaper. Of course it should. The way to treat young children, the way to bring up healthy children is treat them like little doggies. I treat my 3-year-old like a little doggy. They need good food. They need lots and lots and lots of physical activity, miles, miles and miles, walking them around the park, running around the park, activity, outdoor. We live in an obesogenic society. Children are indoors on iPads.
Wise advice. Your kid is very lucky and must be as fit as a butcher's dog. Briefly, George, if you can, would you like your parents to have put you on a diet when you were a kid?
I don't think I would have liked them to put me on a diet because I feel like that would have probably affected me quite deeply.
Okay.
And I feel like that, but at the same time, I wish that they would have maybe chose better choices for me to eat, because, I was a plus-size kid when I was younger. So I know for a fact that when I was younger, they would just go for the cheap, easy option. When you got 3 kids, you just want to make a meal quick time. And that means just ring up the old kebab shop, get a kebab in quickly. It's easy and it's quick. I think that's part of the problem is that people will just go for the easy and quick option and they don't want to spend an hour making food.
Brilliant stuff.
Food.
Brilliant stuff. Food for thought. Thank you so much to my brilliant guests. What a brilliant debate it was. I think what's important is if you've got a kid and they have put on a bit of weight, the most important thing is that you love them. But who do you agree with? What do you think about that? Is it ever right to put your child on a diet? Sam says, of course it's okay. Every child should be on a nutritious and appropriately sized diet. It's the responsibility of parents to monitor their child's weight. Gail says it can be done gently. At the end of the day, the most important thing is for a child to be happy. Jen says parents shouldn't let their children become obese in the first place. It is a form of child abuse. Well, your verdict is in. 86% agree that it is okay for kids to go on a diet. 14% say it is not. Coming up, as Arsenal apologise for having an all-white female squad, is forced diversity the death of meritocracy in sport? Whatever happened to best player plays? GB News star Nana Aquia tackles that one shortly. But next, after parents were kept in the dark about what's being taught in schools, is it time to keep sex out of education? I'll be asking the former Education Minister, Dame Andrea Jenkins, who also gives her verdict on Rishi Sunak's first year in office. She joins me live in the studio. She's here in 2 minutes. She's got some views. You won't want to miss them.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Can you be quiet? What is this?
It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you.
every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
GB News star Nana Aquia on the way, and an exploding race row at Arsenal Football Club. But I'm joined now by the straight-talking Conservative MP, Dame Andrea Jenkins. And the Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, has written to schools demanding that they share their sex education materials with parents. In recent times, extreme gender ideology has been infiltrating lessons, with our kids being asked whether they are on planet non-binary, as well as being taught about breast binders and a galaxy of genders. But following Keegan's announcement, parents will be tipped off before their child receives any more bonkers lectures. So, Dame Andrea, great to have you in the studio. Let's have a look at this. Planet non-binary, breast binders. By the way, that's a device that holds your breasts down so you don't properly go through puberty as a woman. A galaxy of genders. Is this appropriate for kids?
Oh, definitely not, Mark. I mean, what I'm frustrated at, though, is that it was over a year ago I was in the department as a skills minister. And then the top civil servants were saying, we're going to make sure all schools get wrote to ensure that parents can see the material. A year later, they're only just doing it. So that's what I'm finding frustrating. I mean, as Conservatives, I just don't think we should be allowing this in our primary schools. Children should be left to be children. I don't care what people do as adults, but let children be innocent.
Does it surprise you that this woke capture of our public institutions has happened on the watch of a Tory government? Because, for example, you've got the NHS talking about pregnant people and removing the word woman from references to the menopause. Are you surprised that this has happened on the Tory watch?
I think it's been a long time coming, external influences. I remember when I was first a candidate in 2013 and you know, being lobbied with these mass campaigns saying about having no gender on passports, which I disagreed with. Right. And so I think this lobby... That was 10 years ago you were being lobbied about it. So this has been coming a while, I think. And I don't think it helps because civil servants, predominantly, they're quite lefty, aren't they? And I think we've had so many ministers in over the years who weren't necessarily challenged to just looking at the next step on the ladder.
Right.
And when I was in the department, you know...
So you think ministers have bottled it, they folded a bit to the blob, is that what you're suggesting?
I think so, and... But also, when I was in the department, you know, for those short 4 months under Boris and Liz...
A glorious 4 months, by the way. I think we should have a word with Rishi. What was he thinking?
Well, you know, it's having his allies in, isn't he? Yeah. So, but back to the department, they try and keep you busy purposely. And they just fill you with information, but not the information that you're necessarily asking for. So, And look, we've got a schools minister in there who was in the department for years, even when the legislation first went through. So I think Rishi needs to do a major reshuffle and get, you know, new people in there with fresh eyes. Because look, the Secretary of State and the schools minister was in there when this RSHE legislation went through. So I think we need fresh eyes in there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure everyone will accept your defence that the Tories have been hoodwinked by woke civil servants. You know, they'll argue it's a Conservative government, it's been 13 years, and our country is more woke than ever. And there is no evidence, of course, that civil servants are necessarily left-leaning, but you're entitled to your view.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about some of these books that children are being shown at school about sex and sexuality and gender and sexual positions and stuff that
it's awful.
I wouldn't fully comprehend.
No.
If teachers are trying to keep parents out of the picture, does this border on grooming?
I think it does. I think it's appalling, to be honest, Mark. And, I mean, I've got constituents who are keeping their children out of school and homeschooling now because they don't want the children
at great personal expense in terms of time and resources.
Exactly. And it's just so wrong. You know, I just think as adults, what people want to be, I've got no problem with. Be happy, life is short. But children are children. Don't confuse them. Let them be children.
Indeed. I mean, that question about grooming is more just the issue that, you know, why are parents being frozen out? What is? Because many would say that's nonsense, that there's no grooming involved. It's just that kids are being taught about what is a very changing modern society. You know, educators would just want to say, look, people identify by different genders, different sexualities, and it's important that when kids leave school, they understand that. That's what schools are for. So what's wrong with that?
Why primary school? You know, it's why primary school children. You know, I've got a 6-year-old. You've got young
14
children.
and 18 now, and I mean, I'll be honest, they're ruined. It's too late.
Yeah.
But the issue is that you know, perhaps they would argue that even a 6-year-old should know that a man can fall in love with a man, or that a woman identifies as a bloke.
I mean, I just think, why confuse things? I mean, my little Clifford, you know, he loves dogs. He used to want to be a puppy when we got a puppy. So children change, don't they? And they just get excited about their environment. Let them be children.
I mean, if it's primary
when they go to secondary school, it's different.
Right. So would you have no sex ed?
Not in primary school, definitely not.
All right. And then what about 14, 15-year-olds?
Oh, I think that's different.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, definitely. You've got to prepare them for the world. But again, I think, you know, if people want to change gender, that's up to them, but as an adult. And breast binders and all this stuff, you know, young infant children and primary school children should not know about.
You know, the word grooming is a very loaded word, and I certainly wouldn't imply that teachers are actually sort of indulged in some kind of...
No, but let's not forget, Mark.
You know, so, well, what is your word? Is it brainwashing, grooming, social engineering? It's worth debating what's happening.
I really think that teachers need to remember that actually they're the servants of the people, and that's the parents. Yeah. And there should be transparency, and that... As a parent, I don't believe in, you know, I think a parent should be able to parent, and a parent should choose, really, when's the right time for them to learn about other things like this.
Now, we've dealt with sex. There's this other very debatable and contested ideology which is called critical race theory. Now, racism is, we can both agree, the most evil stain on humanity.
Yes.
And a scourge and an ongoing problem. But critical race theory says that you are racist based upon your skin colour. So if you're white, you have unconscious bias, you have white privilege, even if you live in a trailer park and have no money, still white privilege. And it's the opposite of Martin Luther King's aspirations for a colourblind society.
Yes.
This critical race theory is also seeping into schools, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I know even when I go into my local schools, some of the books they have there, and the Greta books as well. And it's, I think, really... you know, people's race, gender, it shouldn't come into it. People are people. And I think really it's about children being taught that to be a kind human being. I think that's the most important thing.
Absolutely, a message we can unite behind. Listen, it's a year anniversary that Rishi Sunak's in number 10.
Yes.
What's your verdict? What's your appraisal? Does he deserve another 5?
Well, look, Mark, I've made no secret of the fact I didn't want him in number 10. And what happened to Boris and Liz, I think, was absolutely awful. And I still, to this day, believe that. After these disastrous by-elections, but let's look at the by-elections, though. If you look at mid-beds, Labour vote went down. So
turnout was shocking.
Yes, but our vote just the stayed at home. And so I actually messaged Rishi the next day, and I was
How do you
quite
message
blunt.
him? Does he
On
like
WhatsApp.
email? He likes the WhatsApp.
Well, I did WhatsApp.
Does he like a Twitter DM?
I haven't done Twitter DM, no.
So does the Prime Minister reply to your WhatsApps?
This one not, but he has the previous two.
That's good.
Yeah.
Does he like an emoji? Do you get a smiley face or a thumbs up?
I don't think he's that kind of person to use the emojis.
No, but it's good. It's good
maybe not with me. But
it's encouraging that he's talking to backbenchers.
Yeah, and so I mean, he didn't message me when I was his PPS, so. But he responded to my other two messages. But I was quite brutal about it, about the by-election results, and I said that, you know, quite frankly, Prime Minister, you're not. Well, I've called him Rishi. You're not cutting through to the electorate. And we need to be bold. You need a major reshuffle, and we need to be conservative again. You know, when we're not trusted on the economy, and what I find really worrying, Mark, is on the doorstep people say that they don't fear Labour anymore, and that's a dangerous place to be in. Let's not forget that Keir Starmer, that he was the one who twice backed Corbyn to put him in number 10, and he was friends of Hamas. Where would the people of Israel be now if that had happened? So you know, where's his scruples? Where's his convictions? He wants more eco taxes, but then the Just Stop Oil have been supporting Labour and donating to them. They wanted stricter lockdowns, and so you know. Do we really want these in government? They don't even know what a woman is, for God's sake.
Now, Labour would argue, of course, that they're streets ahead in the polls because Britain wants a change and that the Tories have made a Horlicks of the economy and the country. Last thought, then, briefly, if you can, what do you want to see from Rishi in the next 12 months? I mean, he's got his list of 5 things: stop the boats, halve are the particular levers that he can pull that will really catch your eye and of the voters that you represent?
Well, I want a leader who's going to connect through to the people. And I want somebody who's going to be true Conservative, to be controlling immigration, to actually be strong on crime. I mean, I believe in the 80s model where you drag people off the street when they're vandalising something. And I just really think it's a strong on crime, good on the economy, and low tax Conservatives. We've got to lower taxes.
It's not too much to ask. Thrilled to have you in the studio, and I look forward to our next encounter. Best wishes to your son, by the way. I think he's sort of with you at work a little bit this week.
He is,
that right?
yeah. He came and voted with me.
There you go. Teach him the tricks of the trade.
I'm trying.
Future Prime Minister, maybe. Brilliant stuff. Dame Andrea Jenkins, thank you for joining us. Coming up, as more shocking revelations about the Nigel Farage debanking scandal come to light. Is it now a crime to be a small C Conservative? And has the British workplace gone full woke? My panel discuss that later. But next, as Arsenal apologise for having an all-white female squad, is forced diversity the death of meritocracy in sport? GB News star Nana Aquia tackles the Gunners next.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Put in your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. After 10, one of Britain's best journalists, Tom Bower, are officers now failing to police British values as they turn a blind eye to calls for terror on the streets. But it's time now for GB News star Nana Aquia. An Arsenal football club have made headlines for all the wrong reasons after publicly denouncing its own women's team for being filled with all-white players. In a self-defeating statement, the Gunners admitted it had a diversity problem and insisted it was a priority to continue to drive, quote, greater diversity and inclusion. Fans slammed the club for the own goal, insisting Arsenal should select the best players regardless of their skin colour. It comes a year after the London football side boasted about becoming the first Premier League team to field a team of 9 black players for the first time in 2002. Arsenal called it a moment of footballing history. So let's talk to the brilliant Nana Aquia about this. And Nana, it's pretty simple, isn't it? You either go for the best players or you tick a box. You can't have both.
Well, I just don't see why they have to have it has to be that there has to be a black player on the squad. Now, look, I get it that people want diversity, and I agree that it's nice to have a mix of people. But when it comes to a game and you're wanting to win, you pick the best players. It's really that straightforward. And it's actually not as simple as it sounds when you're talking about getting more black people to do certain things. I mean, it's not that easy getting more black people in the police force. They're not applying. It's not that easy getting more black people to be, say, head teachers. One of my friends, she is a deputy head teacher, and there was the job going, and she pointed out to her boss that there were no black women in this sort of role. And he goes, well, have you applied? And she said, no. And he went, well, then. I mean, it's not always the case that they're not trying to get black people, but sometimes it might just be that the people who are around you don't particularly want to be in there. But ultimately, it's a meritocracy. How good are you? Don't just put somebody black in there because they're black. They actually need to be good.
However, there is another side to it, isn't there, Nana? I wonder whether being able to see more players of colour on the pitch would inspire young girls to join the game from ethnic communities.
Well, if that's what works for you, but it depends how good they are. I mean, they might be out there and they might be on there because they're black and then they're rubbish and then that's embarrassing. So, and then it looks like you've got a token black person. Yeah, I think we need to sort of start moving away now from this notion that you have to have one black person or one this person or one, because it doesn't necessarily add up. I mean, there was one person who wrote, no professional team, men or women, should be able to have a team that comprises of all white players in 2023. And this is a quote that I read from the Daily Mail that somebody had put down with regard to this. I just think, no, we need to stop seeing colour. Martin Luther King was spot on. The content of their character, not the colour of their skin. Yes, of course, if you have, what about what about, for example, the running, the races, like the athletics? A lot of those players are all black. Do you have to have a white person in there?
Of course not.
I don't hear people calling for that. So I think we've moved on from there. We need to start looking at what people can deliver.
I want British athletes to win medals. I don't care what colour their skin is. But that's the thing about wokeism, isn't it? It's against merit, and that doesn't end well if we get rid of merit altogether. I mean, Nana, imagine if you had a choice about open heart surgery and you're going to have a surgeon that was selected by ability or diversity. Which would you go for?
I just want the best person for the job. You know what I mean? And that's what we all want. So I think we need to start looking for that now instead of just going for colour, because that never works out well. I mean, it's just like a snake that eats its own head in the end.
Listen, Nana, quickly before you go, you'll be back on Saturday at 3. You are the most glamorous as well as most professional and talented journalist at GB News. I don't know if you wear much bling, but Alison Hammond had to apologise for wearing a posh watch that viewers thought was worth an absolute fortune. Did you see that story? What's your reaction to that? She said, I'm so sorry that I wore a nice watch.
Well, I did, and it was silly that she apologised, and it wasn't actually that expensive in the end. It was like a Michael Kors watch that her mum, her late mother, had given her, but the fact that people are even looking and then critiquing her because of the cost of living crisis, I think this is all linking with the fact that if you look at this sort of woke ideology, it's like a politics of envy. I mean, Sir Keir Starmer, most of his policies, a lot of them are about, taking from richer students to pay for poorer students, getting rid of the charitable status of private schools and charging them VAT to pay for poorer schools or state schools because it's in such a mess. And then the non-dom status, which seems to be paying for everything in his manifesto, paying for other... It's just like, no, stop it. Alison should be able to wear whatever watch she wants. And it shouldn't be that she should be questioned or people targeting her because she's wearing it and because it appears to be expensive. But it's sad and it's indicative of the way people look on others now who are successful, because there seems to be this dirge where there is this race to the bottom. If someone's successful, pull them down. Let's get all their money. Let's tax them to the hilt. I'm not liking the way this is going. You should be aspiring to people who are doing well and thinking, wonderful, how can I be that good and achieve that?
GB News' own sparkler, the priceless Nana Aquia, back on Saturday at 6. Thank you, Nana. Coming up following hysteria about Storm Babbitt, is eco-campaigner Dale Vince right that the climate change denial should be against the law? Toby Young and Jenny Barnett debate that. But next, as more shocking revelations about the Nigel Farage debanking scandal come to light, does it reflect a wider British problem? That's next.
Hello again, it's Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather update. For some, it will be a little bit chilly overnight, but in the south we have some heavy rain arriving. That's in association with an area of low pressure currently just to the southwest, but this is going to skirt its way eastwards along the English Channel as we go through the night into Wednesday. That will then bring a significant amount of rain across southern parts. The heaviest rain likely to be in the south-southeast, and here we could see some disruption to travel, perhaps some localised flooding too. Elsewhere towards the east of Scotland, a bit wet and quite cloudy, but further west, northwest, some clear skies, so turning a little bit chilly. A touch of frost possible across some parts of western Scotland. A very wet start then in the southeast on Wednesday morning could cause some problems during the morning rush hour, but the rain should clear away, and then it's a drier picture across many parts of England, Wales into Northern Ireland as we go into the afternoon, but cloudy and wet across eastern parts of Scotland. Some significant rainfall possible here. Temperatures near normal for the time of year, highs around 14, possibly 15 Celsius. As we look towards Thursday, it's going to be quite an unsettled wet day. We have a band of rain that will push its way northeastwards as we go through the morning. Behind it then, some hefty showers are quite likely. Notice some towards the south coast and perhaps in the far east as well. And it's going to be quite blustery too. The unsettled theme continues as we go through Friday into Saturday, and temperatures likely to be near normal for the time of year.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
It's 10 o'clock, I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News Tonight. They called him a crackpot and celebrated debanking him for thought crimes. So following the latest shocking revelations about Nigel Farage's NatWest banking scandal and the comments unearthed from a company WhatsApp group, is it now a crime to be a small C Conservative in Britain, and have our workplaces gone full woke? That's the big debate next with tonight's top panel this evening: Esther McVeigh, Derek Lord and Rebecca Reid. Also tonight, as Shamima Begum begs the Court of Appeal to return to the UK, should we tell the runaway ISIS bride that she's no longer Britain's problem? Begum on trial with my panel shortly. Meanwhile, following hysteria about Storm Babbitt, is eco-campaigner Dale Vince right that so-called climate change denial should be against the law? General Secretary of the Free Speech Union, Toby Young, takes on actress and broadcaster Jenny Barnett on that one. Expect sparks to fly. What do you think? Should it be against the law to deny climate change? And as they turn a blind eye to calls for terror on our streets, are the police neglecting British values and our democracy? One of Britain's finest journalists, Tom Bauer, joins me live in the studio for his forensic analysis on that, plus what the Nigel Farage debanking scandal means for ordinary Brits. Plus tonight's Greatest Britain, Union Jackass, and tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Lots to get through, but first, here are the news headlines and Polly Middlehurst.
Good evening to you. Well, our top story tonight is that Downing Street has confirmed 12 British citizens were killed during the Hamas terror attack in Israel. Another 5 remain missing. It comes after an 85-year-old Israeli hostage released by Hamas last night described the hell of being taken into a spider web of tunnels under Gaza. Yocheved Lifshitz also said she was treated well and seen by a doctor during her ordeal. Hamas says she was returned, along with another Israeli woman, Nurit Cooper, on humanitarian grounds. Their husbands, though, are still being held hostage. Yocheved's daughter Sharon, who's a British citizen, translated her mother's description of the abduction.
Almost people came through the fence. The defense cost 2.5 billion shekels, and it didn't help even a little bit. My mum is saying that she was taken on the back of a motorbike. When she first arrived, they told them that they are Muslims and they're not going to hurt them. And that they ate the same food that the Hamas was eating.
Well, the Israeli Security Agency released footage today of interviews with captured Hamas fighters, where one says they were promised huge rewards for capturing hostages.
In Gaza, whoever brings the kidnaps gets a bonus.
How much is the bonus they give?
An apartment and $10,000.
For each person captured?
Yes.
Who told you this?
That's how it works in El Qassam Brigade.
The commander told you this?
Yes, the company commander.
For each captured, you get an apartment?
Yes, because they wanted as many kidnapped as possible. The goal of our infiltration for them was to capture and kidnap as many as we could.
Well, in news here at home, the cap on bankers' bonuses is to be scrapped. Currently, rules limit most bonuses to 100% of the salary for employees of banks and building societies. Financial regulators say the new move will make the UK a more attractive financial hub. But the decision is being criticised, with the Trade Unions Council boss Paul Novak calling it obscene and an insult to working people. And the Met Office has issued a yellow weather alert for rain across southern England and South Wales, and it's in force until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Flooding's likely in areas, and people are being told to prepare for potential disruption. That comes as 2 women who died in a crash have been named by police as Cheryl Woods and Sarah Smith from Caerphilly in Wales. The mother and daughter were in a crash on the M4 last Friday. And a man who died after his car was swept away in floodwater near Aberdeen has also been named today as Peter Pelling. At least 7 people across the UK are now thought to have lost their lives because of Storm Babette. This is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
My thanks to Polly Middlehurst, who's back in an hour's time. Welcome to GB News Tonight. I'm Mark Dolan, and the first of tomorrow's front pages are in. And we start with The Independent. Mass migration taunt, a new low for Tory dog whistle politics, say The Independent. Housing Minister Robert Jenrick says Labour's new towns will be filled with illegal immigrants as he announces the closure of 50 hotels for refugees. Metro is the other paper. Hope for British hostages is the front page story. I was beaten with sticks, but Hamas captors took care of our needs, says freed Gran. And fears for crew in North Sea tragedy. Brit cargo ship sinks in collision. Very worrying story, that one. We'll bring you more front pages shortly. But for reaction to the big stories of the day, my top panel this evening. Former Cabinet Minister and GB News star Esther McVey MP, banker and visiting Professor Derek Lord, and author and journalist Rebecca Reid. Now, sketchy, dodgy, vile, just 3 of the words used to describe Nigel Farage by NatWest staff members who debanked him. After Coutts, a subsidiary of NatWest Group, slammed his account shut over the summer, a subject access request has now unveiled a host of sickening messages sent between various employees of the bank at the time. And tonight on his show, Nigel revealed more from the NatWest files, including that he was a complex customer beyond their commercial risk, and even accusations that he was a Russian spy. Former NatWest Group CEO Dame Alison Rose resigned in disgrace back in July after a grovelling apology to Nigel, but is now due to receive a payout of more than £11 million, despite presiding over the debanking scandal that rocked the nation. So in the light of these shocking messages at NatWest, is it a crime to be a small c Conservative? And does this go beyond banks? Has the British workforce become fully woke? Derek, what do you think about this? Do you think it's a crime to be a small c Conservative?
Britain is comprised of small c Conservatives. So is the financial services sector. I have something to declare. I have an interest in a private bank. And we should actually make a distinction between retail banking and private banking. It's at the retail end where there is the problem. And why we should be particularly interested in this story is that we, as taxpayers, own 39% of NatWest. And we should be very concerned that this person who led NatWest to a shameful episode that related to the way in which they broadly interpreted the politically exposed rules should be getting a payout of any kind. This is absolutely scandalous.
Well, the shares in the company went down after this drama, didn't it?
And the Chancellor of the Exchequer has it within his power to veto that. And the question tonight is, why are they not doing that?
Do you think the Chancellor should dock her wages as she leaves the company in disgrace?
No, I think if her contract said that if she leaves, she gets the payout, then the contract...
£11 million for failure.
If that's what her contract said, it's what happens in when MPs resign, they get like a nice big cheque for saying...
Not £11 million.
Not £1 million, but still not £11 million, but still free money. I think there's probably an issue with how people's contracts are set up in the first place. But in this specific case, the piece of paper has been signed that says that she gets money if she is got rid of, and that is what happened. Personally, as a taxpayer, I'm very comfortable with my portion of the £11 million for her making Nigel cross. Makes me happy.
Really, that's a very unkind and vengeful thing to say.
I'm a very unkind person.
I mean, Nigel Farage he lost his bank account. You can't operate in this society without a bank account. That's immoral, isn't it?
But he does have a bank account. He has managed to be fine.
But he was threatened with having no bank account. Is that acceptable in your view?
It's just so low on the list of things I care about. Like,
why is it so low on the list of things you care about, given the fact that you or somebody else, a friend of yours, could be debanked for their political views? Is that acceptable in 2023?
By your logic, I wouldn't be, because we've gone woke mad, so I'd be the kind of person who's allowed to have a bank account.
You're not answering my question.
But
do you think it's acceptable that someone could lose their bank account for their political views, which is what these WhatsApp messages prove, is that that's why he was debanked, because he backed Brexit and he was a Conservative?
All the WhatsApp messages prove is that a lot of people in this country think that Nigel is a knob. We all knew that. He's the butt of a joke. If you watch any political satire, everybody takes the piss out of him.
Derek, I'm really shocked by Rebecca's reaction. What do you think?
I'm shocked by Rebecca's reaction, because would you take the same view if I was denied a bank account because I was black?
Well, I like you, so A, I'd be anti-racism, and B, I think you're a nice man. So on a personal level, yes, I would be bothered. However, I do believe that if you are a business, you should be allowed to decide if it's not a protected characteristic, and being a small C Conservative is not a protected characteristic, who you want to give your business
Why
to.
would a bank take a judgment on your position on Brexit?
Nigel Farage is like
what was that anything to do with the bank?
He is the most anti-cancel culture person, the most vocal anti-cancel culture person. And then the second he was in any way impacted by people wanting to be cancelled, he was there being like, you should lose your job, you should lose your job. He was calling for heads to roll left, right and centre. What happened to people being able to freely express their views, which he apparently believes in?
Esther, not much shocks me, but Rebecca's comments just now have.
Oh, absolutely. I've never heard such nonsense in my life. Of course you can't say, oh, I like this person, you can have a bank account. I don't like you, you can't. And by the way, the CEO, I would say she breached client confidentiality, which is
that's
key.
The reason she lost her job, right?
Yeah, but she shouldn't get the 11 million. I think you could quite look into that. But I think what is so outrageous is that you can think so lowly of your customers and think you can talk about them like that. These are the people paying your wages. And there's another, not just a small C for Conservative, but the word culture. The culture in this organisation must be so bad that you think you can just talk about, like I said, your clients and customers like this, and you know that you can do it because the people at the very top are pretty much allowing you to do it. So I think there's a huge
he is a celebrity. He's a national figure of fun. People offer him every day.
And customer service with the bank, it just shows how little they think of their customers. They're closing banks on the high street. They don't care about them, and they talk about them with such disregard.
Banks on the high street, absolutely.
Rebecca?
But banks on the high street, absolutely. There is a complete lack of accessibility, particularly for elderly people. The way that they treat their customers in that sense, I agree with you. I also, at the time, agreed with, and continue to agree with, you can't go to a dinner party and start talking about internal affairs at a particular bank. But these are private messages where people are discussing a national figure. Just like if they had been saying David Beckham.
Do you think he should have been? Do you think he should have been cut off by the electricity board or lost his gas supply?
It's an odd thing that people keep going back to that, because that's
you can't answer that question. That's a very easy one.
If you were talking about water,
should Nigel Farage be deprived of a gas supply or a phone line?
I would say that I'd be more concerned about the number of children in this country who are in freezing cold houses because of the cost of living crisis, who can't have gas in their houses because people don't have any money. That is a problem. One man who is a big show-off getting some kind of repercussions for his behaviour is not the biggest problem.
Zero empathy for a man whose life could have been destroyed.
Sorry, zero empathy for a man who can't bank with kids.
Well, you're not a millionaire if you don't have a bank account.
Because you can't have a kids account.
The upside in this is that Nigel Farage actually performed a huge public service by exposing this. Millions of people up and down the country now know that banks are not there to make moral judgments. They're there to deliver us, the consumer, with a service. And the contract, which I think is the real issue here, that's going to give Alison Rose £11 million of taxpayers' money, is probably something that was drafted by public sector employees, because when John Brown had to leave BP, He forfeited more than £5 million.
OK,
briefly,
I'll give you the final word.
I want to ask a question. Is it true to say that NatWest offered a different bank account to Nigel Farage? Did they not offer him...
After enormous public pressure?
No, before that, then they said you can't be Coots anymore, you can be with NatWest. Is that not what happened?
No, I don't understand that to be the case.
Rebecca, you never get to run a country or a big organisation that you can be so whimsical with who you would actually allow to have a bank account or allowed to have gas or electricity.
Nobody is going to put me in charge of anything,
shocking.
Esther. Do not worry. Nobody's going to put me in charge.
OK, brilliant stuff. Well, look, a NatWest Group spokesperson has said we've written to Mr Farage to apologise sincerely for the deeply inappropriate comments made about him and the poor behaviours displayed. Neither are consistent with the standards of service that our clients should expect. We're determined to learn the necessary lessons from this so that in the future we live up to the high expectations our customers and clients rightly place upon us. Now, next year's US election is looking like a rematch between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, the battle of the septuagenarians. And in a, well, actually, no, octo in Joe Biden's point of view. OK, in a taster of the battle to come, the Donald has sent supporters at a New Hampshire rally into a spin by saying exactly what he'd like to do to Sleepy Joe, and he's not pulling his punches.
Remember when Biden? I'd like to take him to the back of the barn. I dream of that. You know what I do with him? Oh, I do. I'd hit him right in that fake nose. That fake nose. They'd have plastic lying all over the floor.
Is it just my imagination, or is the Donald's face getting redder by the day? I think we can all agree Trump would get the better of Biden in the ring, but will he get the knockout blow at the ballot box? Coming up, as Shamima Begum begs the Court of Appeal to return to the UK, should we tell the runaway ISIS bride that she's no longer Britain's problem? My panel return later to debate that. And next, following hysteria about Scotland's Storm Babet, is eco-campaigner Dale Vince right that so-called climate change denial should be against the law? Free speech campaigner Toby Young and TV legend Jenny Barnett argue that one out. Expect sparks to fly.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Can you be quiet? What is this?
It's
my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Well, there's been an explosive reaction to the comments of my brilliant panellist, Rebecca Reid, about Nigel Farage. She laughed and guffawed about the fact that he was debanked and more or less celebrated it. She revelled in it. Well, a strong reaction on email. I've got to say you're not happy. Alexandra speaks for many. She says, Mark, I'm absolutely disgusted with the comments made by Rebecca Reid about Nigel Farage. Really terrible. She should definitely be pulled up about that or be suspended or sacked. Really nasty stuff, says Alexandra. Listen, Alexandra, I understand your anger, and I was really shocked by what Rebecca said. But listen, the bottom line is that this show is the home of diverse opinion. That's why we love Derek, we love Esther, and we love Rebecca as well. It's all about opinions. So what is yours? Mark at gbnews.com. Now, lots more to come. Eco-hysteria is plaguing the nation as Storm Babette triggers a raft of fears that man-made climate change is behind the destruction. So far, 6 people have very sadly died as 130-mile-an-hour winds and torrential rain swept across the country, causing significant disruption. But is the creeping demand for climate authoritarianism a proportionate response to what some would simply call bad weather? The man shouting loudest is top football chairman Dale Vince. The Just Stop Oil donor posted this video of flooding at Mansfield's football ground, claiming that, quote, climate denial is dangerous and should be illegal. Well, joining me to debate this is the General Secretary of the Free Speech Union, Toby Young, and legendary broadcaster and actress Jenny Barnett. Toby, let me start with you. To make climate change denial illegal feels like compelled speech, doesn't it? In a free society, you've got to let people say things, even if they're not true.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. The ridiculous thing, I think, about this suggestion is that it's not people on my side of this debate, the climate contrarians, not climate denialists, by the way, climate contrarians. We on this side of the debate, we are much more likely to make accurate predictions about the climate than climate hysterics. I'll give you a couple of examples. So in 2002, George Monbiot said that Britain would suffer from a famine within 10 years. Prince Charles warned that we had 8 years left to save the planet. That was in 2009. Al Gore said that we would suffer from an ice-free Arctic by 2013. What about jailing all these people that make these alarmist, completely inaccurate, hysterical predictions about the climate, Jenny, instead of people who are just trying to exercise a bit of skepticism to make sure we're not immiserated for the sake of what is clearly an ideological agenda?
Jenny, I've been watching you for years. Nice to meet you for the first time. Isn't it better to let people have the freedom to say things which may or may not be true and have it out in the open so that their arguments can be debunked?
Yes, I think that there should be free speech. I agree with Toby.
Where's the but? I knew there was a but coming.
There is a but. Criminal sanctions are potent tools to mark out conduct, and I'm reading this, that lies beyond all limits of toleration and destroys human security. The fact is that we are not being given the truth. People are confused. And as long as you're in a situation where people are being affected in countries that have aren't burning forests and doing all sorts of stuff, there has to be aggressive mitigation to reach net zero emissions. Let me finish. The existential threat becomes more real, and it's not individuals who should be denied freedom of speech. It's people of power, people in corporation, people in governments who lie to us that there isn't climate change. We're part of the problem, and we are frightened, and the people who've got the access to making things better are lying to us.
Toby.
Answer me, Toby.
I think it's symptomatic of the fact, Jenny, that people on your side of this discussion simply never listen to the arguments of people on the other side, that you think that we're climate change denialists. No one on my side of the debate claims that climate change isn't happening. We all acknowledge that climate change has happened. Average global temperatures have increased since 1850, since the Industrial Revolution. No one is denying that. The argument is about, well, what's the cause of that? Is it human activity? Is it carbon emissions? And if they are a cause, how great a cause are they? And can we actually reduce the amount by which the climate average global temperatures are increasing by reducing carbon emissions? That's what the argument is about. And to accuse us of climate denialism, I'm afraid, just suggests that you aren't listening. You don't want a debate. You don't want a discussion. You just want to dogmatically impose your views on everyone else. And this is the latest example of it. We'll throw you in there if you don't agree with it.
People go to bed at night frightened about melting ice caps. People go to bed at night frightened about...
Get over yourself. Jenny Barnett, you've been in woke East Sussex for too long now. The Earth's not going to blow up by next Tuesday.
No, but there is an analogy that is being used. People are sitting in a theatre. There is a fire. People in the good seats can't see it, can't smell it. Other people are trying to put out the fire that they can see. The people in the cheap seats are going to go up first. Now, I'm not suggesting that this is a class issue. I am suggesting that I want to listen to you, but you also need to listen to the fear of humanity. And by making a potent tool of criminal sanctions, you will get people in corporations that will have to listen. They represent us, and they're doing bugger all. Sorry.
Jenny Barnett, I think that Toby raises a good point. He uses language about being a sort of a skeptic, if you like, a contrarian about something such as climate change. People that were concerned about the impact of lockdowns or questioned the origins of the COVID-19 virus were cancelled. They were heavily censored. They were subjected to this kind of tyranny, and we're going to do it all again with net zero.
It's not tyranny. We had a government who had Partygate at the basis of who they were.
That old chestnut.
And the rest would be quiet. And the rest of us were doing the right thing, playing by the rules. With climate change, what is a contrarian? I've never heard of it.
It's somebody that questions things and doesn't take any narrative spoon-fed to them by the mainstream media. Isn't that right, Toby Young?
Yes, and I think you're exactly right, Mark. The fact that there isn't allowed to be a proper public debate about this issue means we are rushing headlong towards an absolutely disastrous future. Net zero, we learn, is going to mean power cuts, possible power cuts.
Jenny, I'll give you the last word. Briefly, Toby, if you can.
We had the head of the National Gas Network this week, Mark, warning us that if we get rid of natural gas, wind and solar power are not going to do the job of replacing it. So we're going to have to learn to live with much less power, days at a time with no power. That's what people should be frightened about, Jenny, not these stupid alarmist predictions.
Okay,
that
Jenny, last word to
never
you.
Come true.
Look, as long as we have migration, as long as we have a world which is drying up and flooding, the people should be making decisions for humanity, not for corporate interests and not for making money. Rishi Sunak has just stopped net zero. He doesn't care. He wants to have coal mines. Who do you believe? I'm an innocent layperson in this. I want to believe you, Toby. I want to trust you, but I can't.
Jenny Barnett, brilliant to have you on the show. Delightful first encounter, the first of many, I sincerely hope. Also, my thanks to free speech champion Toby Young. Your reaction, mark at gbnews.com. Coming up in Uncancelled as the police turn a blind eye to calls for terror on British streets. Are they neglecting our values and our democracy? One of Britain's finest journalists, Tom Bower, joins me live in the studio for his forensic analysis on that, plus what the Nigel Farage debanking scandal means for ordinary Brits. But next in a media buzz, as Shamima Begum begs the Court of Appeal to return to the UK, should we tell the runaway ISIS bride that she is no longer Britain's problem? My panel debate that alongside more of tomorrow's papers, hot off the press. See you in 2.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie, second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Put your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows,
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. More on the Nigel Farage debanking scandal with Britain's finest journalist, Tom Bower, live in the studio. But let's get more front pages, and they've been delivered. Let's have a look. We start with The Guardian. Shalom hostage offers hand to militant, and UN calls for immediate ceasefire to end epic suffering in Gaza. The I newspaper next. UN chief warns of violations in Gaza, provoking fury from Israel. Daily Mail, the hand of peace from Israeli hostage, 85 years of age, that shames Hamas killers. It's interesting, isn't it? The Mail call them Hamas killers. All The Guardian can manage is militant. How about this from the Daily Mail? United Nations chief says Hamas raid didn't happen in a vacuum. Anger as UN boss attacks Israel over Gaza crisis. OK, those are your front pages. Getting to that age now where I've got to take the glasses off to read the print. Welcome to 49. Can you believe it?
Yeah.
Listen, I'm delighted to get the reaction to the big stories of the day from my top pundits tonight. Former Cabinet Minister, no less, GB News star Esther McVey MP, banker and visiting Professor Derek Lord, and author and journalist and left-wing shock jock, Rebecca Reid.
On the naughty step, Rebecca Reid.
Oh, that's where we want you. And now the ISIS bride, Shamima Begum, spent a bit of time on the naughty step lately. She's been battling to regain her British citizenship as her lawyers today went to the Court of Appeal to overturn a previous ruling that barred her from ever returning to Britain. In 2015, Begum travelled to Syria to join ISIS and married a jihadi. But when she resurfaced 4 years later, the then Home Secretary Sajid Javid slammed the door shut on her return. But now she'll argue that she should be allowed back because the government failed to protect her from being sexually exploited by ISIS. So should we tell Shamima Begum that she is no longer Britain's problem? Esther?
Yes.
Why? Where's your empathy?
Well, I think we have...
This is a young woman. She was groomed. She was tricked. She was naive.
No, I think when she said national security should not be the trump card, I think it should. You saw what she did. She planned to leave the country. She didn't want anything to do with democracy. She wanted to become an Islamic State wife. That's what she did. And now she's decided she wants to come back home after the terror that she's seen, that she's brought upon other people. And I don't think she should be. And I think she's quite outrageous, and I'm taking it that she's got legal aid to bring her back into the country. She's found lawyers who are quite happy to be paid legal aid, and she's had appeal after appeal after appeal, and she wants to come back here now. And I say no for the national security of this country.
Is the national security argument a strong one, Derek? Is this woman really going to plot terror attacks in the future?
Well, it's one of the arguments, but it's not the only argument. I think, let me first say that I am as appalled as everybody else that this person was potentially groomed and that she was radicalised. And I am very concerned about national security. So, in the end, national security must out-trump everything. But there must be due process. And due process I feel much more comfortable with if it happens through the courts, not taken by ministers. It should never be a political decision. And there's one further thing. We have the best courts in the world. I think there should be, in the interest of de-radicalising people, there should be a major show trial. This should be televised. We should be able to see what's happening in our name. And I think that we are best placed to do that here in the United Kingdom.
Now, Rebecca, I'm torn on this. I think many in the country are. The bottom line is that she's a young woman. She's essentially, said that what she did was a mistake. She regrets it, all the rest of it. On the other hand, if she were to stay, what message does that send to other would-be terrorists?
Well, it's two things. Firstly, the most powerful thing you could do for other terrorists is to have her here, eating a Big Mac, saying how much she bloody loves living in the UK because she's been there.
Couldn't it be like a Cornish pasty?
She's done
Does
it.
it have to be
It's
American?
Horrid. It can be
But a Big Mac is American.
It can be anything. But
Yeah,
the point
Greg's
is,
vegan sausage roll.
she's seen what happens when you go, and it is not nice and it's not fun. And she got there and she went, "Oh my God, what have I done?"
But if they see her eating a Greg's vegan sausage roll, don't they think, "Oh, she got away with it"?
No, they think she tried it. It didn't work. She couldn't stick it. It was awful. She went home. She is a very useful tool. There are two other things here. One, being groomed is not good times, and she was a very impressionable teenager. I used to get recreationally groomed by paedophiles all the time on the internet as a teenager. It's very normal for that kind of early days of the internet. Early days of the internet, like teenager.
You were recreationally groomed
yeah, so
by
they were
a
in
paedophile?
chat rooms. Like I would talk to old men on the internet, and occasionally I would go and meet up with them.
No.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. It is by the grace of God that I didn't get murdered. And if any of them had been like, "You seem like you'd be really good at a death cult," I was 15.
Did your family know
I was
about
nervous.
this?
Did your mother and father
No, of course
know?
not. I told them I was going to town, and then I went to London. And,
And when did this stop? This
like it's
liaison?
therapy now. Well, probably when I got to about 18 and paedophiles lost interest. But aged out.
Any of this true?
Anyway, sorry.
Rebecca, what's got into you tonight?
Oh no, this is honestly
actually
talk
happened.
to anybody of my age. They will have been a little bit groomed on websites like Habbo Hotel and Preteen Chat. It's very normal. You're on the internet. It was badly supervised. Parents do a better job now. So I understand how easy it would be to be groomed. But the more important thing, just to come off grooming for a second, is that if you're born here. If you are born here, you should not be able to be stripped of your citizenship. Anybody should be terrified of that. If they can find out that I might have one French grandparent and I do something that makes the government cross, suddenly I'm France's problem. That is not a workable system.
No. I think you might have been groomed, as you said. You might have met somebody,
We all
as you
were.
said, but were you thinking, what I'm going to be doing is become an ISIS wife? What I'm going to do is go
I'm going to kill innocent Westerners.
Honestly, I can see how it happens.
And what I don't understand also is how you can be so sure that, yes, she was groomed there, but she's fine now.
No, I don't
She's
think
changed her
she's
mind
fine now.
You don't know.
I don't think she's fine
groomed
now.
to come back to be a sleeper terrorist.
I think Shami would have all of
And
us.
another thing to say, where is the evidence that she was groomed? Perhaps she's just a nasty individual
at 15.
with a bloodlust.
At 15, I mean, all 15-year-olds are awful, but she was 15. She was not of the age majority. She was a
She might have just been a nasty, evil, twisted child.
But it isn't just it's not just about stripping somebody of their citizenship. The implication of that is making somebody stateless.
Yeah, which shouldn't be possible, right?
Almost.
All right. So Rebecca, she stays.
She's our problem. We created her.
Should she stay or should she go, Derek?
It's for the courts to decide, not
Should she stay or should she go?
National security, she should go.
There you go. Look, what do you think, folks? Mark at gbnews.com. We'll get to your thoughts shortly. After being mercilessly mocked in the hit US TV series South Park, the Sussexes have found themselves once again a laughingstock, this time in the latest series of the American cartoon Family Guy. Take a watch.
Millions from Netflix for no one knows what.
Put it with the rest of them.
Babe, time to do our daily $250,000 sponsored Instagram post for Del Taco.
I shouldn't have left the made-up nonsense.
There you go. Harry and Meghan once again responsible for a bit of light relief. Coming up, Nicola Sturgeon passed her driving test on her first attempt, age 53. But has she sent the SNP down the road to electoral alienation? My panel will debate that at the end of the show in tonight's Greatest Britain and Union Jackasses. Stay tuned. But next in Uncancelled, looking forward to this. We've saved our best till last. As the police turn a blind eye to calls for terror on our streets, are they neglecting British values and democracy? One of Britain's finest journalists, Tom Bower, joins me live in the studio for his forensic analysis on that and what the Nigel Farage debanking scandal means for ordinary Brits. The unmissable Tom Bower, king of the truth bomb, is next.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sunday, the 29th of October at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Time now for Uncancelled and the brilliant journalist and author Tom Bower. And the nation was left reeling this weekend after chilling chants of jihad were heard at a pro-Palestine rally in London, but not acted upon by police who were present. The Prime Minister says the government will now clarify guidance given to police, ensuring arrests are made at future rallies if protesters call for jihad, which is widely accepted to mean an Islamic holy war. Here's what Sunak told the Commons yesterday.
These are not marches for peace, Mr. Speaker. These are marches for hate. They are glorifying the murder, the worst murder of Jews since the Holocaust, and they have to stop, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, hateful extremism has no place in our society. Calls for jihad and for Muslim armies to rise up are not only a threat to the Jewish community, but also a threat to our democratic values. Anyone who commits a crime, whether that be inciting racial hatred, glorifying terrorism, or violating public order, should expect to face the full force of the law.
Now, Tom Bauer, whether it's taking the knee to the Black Lives movement, which is a Black Lives Matter movement, now highly discredited, whether it's dancing with Extinction Rebellion eco-protesters, whether it's asking Extinction Rebellion nutjobs who have glued themselves to the motorway whether they'd like a sandwich or a drink, does British policing have a cultural problem now?
Oh, certainly. I mean, Rowley is just the latest of the police commissioners of Scotland Yard who is letting down the public. I mean, I'm not sure whether he understands this mixture of cowardice and prejudice, but in the end, he protected people chanting violence on Saturday. And he not only protected those advocating violence, but denied those, the Jews, who are pleading for peace, their right to demonstrate.
Right.
And he hides behind this idea that he hasn't got the law on his side. But when he said he couldn't stop the Just Stop Oil demonstrators because the law wasn't tough enough, the government changed the law to give him the powers, and he didn't use them. Said again the law isn't strong enough. And what's really worrying is that he said that he had been watching the demonstration with lawyers from the CPS, the same CPS that can only manage 1% of all rape cases being prosecuted. These aren't proper lawyers. These are all prejudiced culture wokes. These are people who are politically correct who are too terrified to take on the Muslim extremists and think to themselves, unfortunately, historically, which is quite consistent, doesn't matter about the Jews.
Well, indeed, and the safety and security of the Jewish people living in this country should be a priority for the police as well. But that seems to have been glossed over in the last 2 weeks, even though it's Israel that was attacked on the 7th of October.
Absolutely, it's not glossed over. The problem is that the police have a prejudice, and the prejudice is to support the Muslims because for their own reasons they don't want to antagonise the large, potentially very violent Muslim community, and they know that the Jews won't cause them any trouble. Unfortunately, that's historically what has happened in so many occasions over the last 1,000 years. But the real problem is I don't think Rowley himself is a courageous man. I don't think he's a man with insight. What actually is the challenge to the state? And unfortunately, that is something that's grown up for years in Britain, that the government and all the institutions have allowed militant Muslims, not the general mass, but the Islamic militants, to become absolutely protected from the law. And that, in the end, ended in the terrible bombing in Manchester. And I just tell you, remember the horror in Britain when the Manchester bombing happened, and the anger. Look at Israel. It's the equivalent of about 10,000 Britons being murdered, what happened in Israel. Are they why shouldn't we be surprised about their anger about what happened?
Most definitely. And we also have the case of Batley, in which a school teacher is still on the run, lost his career, in hiding with his family for showing some materials that related to the Prophet Muhammad in a media studies class. This guy hounded out of his job and home and on the run in Britain.
Exactly. And nothing happened to the Muslims who terrorised him. Nothing ever happens. I mean, look in Tower Hamlets. The mayor of Tower Hamlets are convicted for corruption, and he is actually allowed to be re-elected as mayor and is imposing all sorts of restraints on people in Tower Hamlets. And that's the problem. In the end, I think in Europe, people are far more conscious of the challenge by the militant Muslims, by the extremists, and that here there's far too much tolerance. And unfortunately, the tolerance starts with the police. And Rowley just showed in black and white on Saturday that he's too scared to enforce the law and impose our cultural values, liberal democratic values, on 100,000 people screaming for the murder of 7 million Jews in Israel.
That's right. The rule of law, democracy, values of tolerance and acceptance were all discarded this weekend in Britain, in our capital city. We've seen haven't we, Tom? People arrest someone for praying outside an abortion centre. A lay preacher, spoken to by cops for preaching the Bible in London. 6 officers attending an address where an autistic child had said a policewoman looked like a lesbian. The police risk bringing themselves into disrepute, don't they? Public confidence is critical, and at the moment it's on a knife edge.
Well, I think they have brought themselves into disrepute for those very reasons. And Rowley just put himself into the dock for all this when he said that there wasn't a hate crime. 100,000 people screaming for the eradication of a nation. They're pushing 7 million Jews into the sea to their death, and he doesn't think there's a hate crime. But when one man says that he doesn't think that a woman can have a penis, he's to be prosecuted for hate crime. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And the problem is that no one is telling the police this won't do. But it's the culture of the police. We're dealing with a terrible cultural problem, which doesn't only in the police, but in the civil service and in so many public institutions.
Well, indeed, which brings us to the Nigel Farage debanking scandal. First of all, why did the establishment have it in for Farage?
Well, because he championed Brexit and won. And because he is the person who brought immigration into the issue. They loathe that. They want endless immigration because they wanted their cleaners and things and all the rest of it. But I think they just see him as a hate figure.
Insulated from the downside of
it. Yeah, but they hate him because he succeeded with Brexit, beat the establishment love of Europe. And he is so articulate, and he's such a clever politician, and they don't like being beaten at their own game.
But they talked about extreme views. And I can't find any extreme views.
No, but the whole point of the extremism is the Brexit and not saying multiculturalism.
17.4 million people.
I know, but the whole thing is that he excites
a majority of Brits
them.
want to stop the boats.
But the majority don't count. It is the small elite that counts.
There are wider implications. Nigel is a high-profile case regarding debanking, but does it speak of a bigger story about
yes.
sort of woke capture, the progressive left of our private and public institutions?
The real problem is in Nigel's case that none of those people below Alison Rose will be fired. I mean, 2 people have gone, 3 have gone at the top. Yeah. But the culture of the bank won't change.
Same as the BBC, isn't it? You can change the Director General, but not all the producers.
Well, we had that last week. And what's happened? There's the BBC, who absolutely destroyed Britain's credibility and Israel's credibility by saying, as we discussed last week, that it was an Israeli strike in the hospital. They set the tone, the BBC, but they won't admit it. And it's been a catastrophe what they did.
And possibly cost lives as well.
Cost lives, cost Biden's trip, everything, the BBC's reckless description of that explosion.
So we've seen this cultural capture of our police force. You've seen it in the NHS, where they talk about birthing people rather than pregnant women. No reference to females in literature about the menopause. You've got corporations who don't like Nigel Farage for his political views. It's across the public and private sector. Is there any rowing back on this, or has woke won?
Well, in my view, the tragedy is woke could have been defeated if only Cameron Osborne had absolutely reversed everything that happened under Blair. But they're the ones, in my view, who are the guilty men, because if only they had taken an ideological stance against Blairism, against the woke culture, we would have by now eradicated it. But they pandered to it. And that was the great error. And then, of course, happened Brexit, and it was all too late. And unfortunately, even the blessed Boris Johnson, in your view, blessed, didn't grasp it properly. I mean, he went along with it as well. And it was a great tragedy. And now we're reaping the poison of this terrible, terrible militancy, whether on our streets against Israel or whether in the hospitals or anywhere else.
OK, brilliant. Briefly, short few seconds if you can, Tom. It's a year in number 10 for Rishi Sunak.
Yeah.
Has he got anything to celebrate?
I think he did as well as you predicted, because I remember a year ago you said, why is everyone against Rishi? Yeah. And you were right. Yeah, he's done better than I thought he would. And I don't think that he's absolutely ruled out yet.
There you go. Tom, look forward to seeing you hopefully in a week's time. My thanks to the brilliant journalist and best-selling biographer, Tom Bauer. OK, well, speaking to reporters yesterday, the Met Police's Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, said the conversation with the Home Secretary and ministers finished around the line of the law. It's our job to enforce that line. It's Parliament's job to draw that line. And the thought is that it may be events are illustrating some of the lines are not in the right place. There you go, brilliant stuff. OK, well, look, thank you to Tom Bauer. It's time now to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union jackass. And let's start with our brilliant Esther McVeigh with your Greatest Britain.
OK, my Greatest Britain, it's an honorary Greatest Britain, and that is the creative team behind the cartoon Family Guy and their episode portraying Meghan and Harry as grifters, mocking their earnings as the butler hands them millions for money from no one knows what. It's a bit like the South Park, how they mock Meghan and Harry with the Privacy World Tour.
Marvellous.
Fantastic.
What a great nomination. How about you, Derek, your Greatest Britain?
It's got to be Paul Gilbert. He's from Chesterfield, as was his mother, late mother, 82. She was found dead by him, floating in her own home in the street where she's lived all her life. And when he came on the television to talk about this, he did so in a very British way, I thought, calm, cool and collected. And I felt deep sense of compassion for him.
That's a lovely, lovely nomination, and may God rest his soul. Rebecca, you're a brilliant hero of the day.
Mine's also honorary. It's Britney Spears, whose book, The Woman in Me, has come out, where she talks about her conservatorship and her experience of fame and everything from the head shaving incident to the abortion that she had when she was with Justin Timberlake. It's a very, very brave piece of writing. OK, well, look, I do sympathise very much with Derek's nomination, but I'm striking all of those nominations because my Greatest Britain is Esther McVeigh. Oh. It's her birthday today. Happy birthday
to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Esther. Happy birthday.
Let me just say that Esther McVeigh is a brilliant broadcaster. She's a really principled politician. She had an amazing career and she's a fabulous person. So we love you loads, Esther McVeigh. Derek, I've only got a couple of seconds for your. Well, actually, no. I'll start with you, Esther. It's going to be your jackass. A couple of seconds, if you could.
Utterly shameless, Sinead O'Hagan, for thinking that she could come back to this country, having joined Islamic State and getting the taxpayer to pay for her legal bills.
Who's she kidding? Derek, briefly, if you can, your jackass.
It's got to be Nicola Sturgeon. She took to Twitter to tell us all that she can now drive. Let's hope that she reverses out of Scotland, like all the other people trying to leave since she was since the SNP started governing.
She drives me around the bed. Rebecca, your jackass.
Not to poke this hornet's nest again, but Nigel Farage, not only because...
Poor Nigel.
Because, in fairness, I'm sure he's a perfectly nice man, but he is anti-cancel culture and he is trying to get people cancelled, and I don't like the hypocrisy of that.
Today's jackass is Shamima Begum. Thank you so much to the team for working so hard today. You for your company at home, my brilliant pundits. Patrick's looking after 9 o'clock tomorrow. I'll see you Friday at 9.
Hello again, it's Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather update. For some, it will be a little bit chilly overnight, but in the south we have some heavy rain arriving. That's in association with an area of low pressure currently just to the southwest, but this is going to skirt its way eastwards along the English Channel as we go through the night into Wednesday. That will then bring a significant amount of rain across southern parts, the heaviest rain likely to be in the south-southeast, and here we could see some disruption to travel, perhaps some localised flooding too. Elsewhere towards the east of Scotland, a bit wet and quite cloudy, but further west-northwest, some clear skies, so turning a little bit chilly. A touch of frost possible across some parts of western Scotland. A very wet start then in the southeast on Wednesday morning could cause some problems during the morning rush hour, but the rain should clear away, and then it's a drier picture across many parts of England, Wales into Northern Ireland as we go into the afternoon, but cloudy and wet across eastern parts of Scotland. Some significant rainfall possible here. Temperatures near normal for the time of year, highs around 14, possibly 15 Celsius. As we look towards Thursday, it's going to be quite an unsettled wet day. We have a band of rain that will push its way northeastwards as we go through the morning. Behind it then, some hefty showers are quite likely. Notice some towards the south coast and perhaps in the far east as well. And it's going to be quite blustery too. The unsettled theme continues as we go through Friday into Saturday, and temperatures likely to be near normal for the time of year.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life: your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquia, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
You're with GB News, and our top story tonight. The United Nations Secretary-General says Hamas's attacks on Israel didn't happen in a vacuum. Antonio Guterres says there are now clear violations of international humanitarian law in Gaza. But Israel's Foreign Minister Eli Cohen says there's only one side to support in the conflict. He's calling for Mr. Guterres to resign, saying he's lost all morality and impartiality. The Secretary-General says the appalling attacks by the terrorist group cannot justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people.
The Palestinian people have been subjected to 56 years of suffocating occupation. They have seen their land steadily devoured by settlements and plagued by violence, their economy stifled, their people displaced, and their homes demolished. Their hopes for a political solution to their plight have been vanishing. But the grievances of the Palestinian people cannot justify the appalling attacks by Hamas, and those appalling attacks cannot justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people.
Well, today, Downing Street confirmed 12 British citizens were killed during the Hamas terror attack on Israel. Another 5 remain missing, and it comes after 85-year-old Israeli hostages released by Hamas last night described the hell of being taken into a spider web of tunnels underneath Gaza. Yocheved Lifshitz also said she was treated well and was seen by a doctor during her ordeal. Hamas says she was returned along with another Israeli woman, Nurit Cooper, on humanitarian grounds. Their husbands, though, are still still being held as hostages. Yogaved's daughter, Sharon, who's a British citizen, translated her mother's description of how the abduction happened.
A swarm of people came through the fence. The defence cost 2.5 billion shekels, and it didn't help even a little bit. My mum is saying that she was taken